The galaxy was vast, cold, and unkind. Stars burned in the distance, their light barely touching the rusted hull of a forgotten starship drifting in the void. The ship, once a marvel of alien design, now floated like a ghost in the endless black. Its name was lost, its purpose abandoned. Aliens called it junk, a relic not worth salvaging. They passed it by, their sleek ships ignoring the dented, broken frame. To them it was nothing, a failure from a forgotten war left to rot in the emptiness of space. But not to Jake. Jake was a human, a mechanic from a small colony on a dusty planet. His hands were rough, stained with grease from years of fixing broken machines. He wasn't tall or strong, but his eyes had a spark, a stubborn glint that refused to give up. Jake worked for a salvage crew, a ragtag group that scavenged wrecks for parts to sell. The pay was low, the work dangerous, but Jake loved it. He saw stories in broken things, potential in what others called trash. The cruise ship, a clunky hauler called the Drift, hovered near the abandoned starship. The crew laughed as they scanned it. "No value," said the captain, a gruff alien with 4 arms. "Old tech. No weapons, no fuel. A waste of time." The others agreed, already plotting the next job. But Jake stared at the wreck through the Drift's cracked viewport. Its shape was strange, curved like a bird's wing with jagged scars from battles long past. Something about it called to him. "Let me check it," Jake said, his voice quiet but firm. The captain snorted. "You alone?" "It's dead, human. Don't waste our air." Jake shrugged, already pulling on his patched-up spacesuit. "I'll be quick." "If it's junk, I'll leave it," the crew muttered, calling him stubborn, foolish, a typical human. But they let him go. Jake didn't care what they thought. He'd fix things no one else could. Engines, generators, even a toy robot for a kid back home. If there was something worth saving in that wreck, he'd find it. He floated across the void, his suit's thrusters humming softly. The starship loomed closer, massive and silent. Its hull was pitted with dents, its windows dark. Jake's boots touched the metal and he anchored himself with magnetic clamps. He found an airlock, rusted but intact, and pried it open with a tool from his belt. Air hissed as he stepped inside. The ship's interior was a maze of shadows. Corridors stretched in every direction, lined with broken panels and tangled wires. Jake's flashlight cut through the dark, revealing strange symbols carved into the walls. They weren't human, but they felt familiar, like a puzzle waiting to be solved. He moved deeper, his boots echoing in the silence. In the heart of the ship, he found the engine room. It was huge, bigger than any he'd seen. The core was dead, its lights long gone, but the machinery was unlike anything Jake knew. Alien tech advanced beyond human understanding, yet broken. He ran his hand over a console, feeling the cold metal. Most would see scrap. Jake saw a challenge. He spent hours there, poking through circuits, tracing wires, and muttering to himself. The crew called over his comms, telling him to hurry up. "Nothing's there, human!" they barked. Jake ignored them. He found a data panel, its screen cracked but faintly glowing. He tapped it, and a faint hum filled the room. Words appeared, alien, unreadable, but Jake didn't need to understand them. He knew machines. He felt their rhythm, their logic. Days passed. Jake returned to the wreck again and again, sneaking away when the crew slept. He brought tools, patched cables, and rerouted power. The ship began to wake bit by bit. Lights flickered. A low hum grew stronger. The crew noticed but didn't care. They thought Jake was wasting time. Humans, they scoffed. Always chasing dreams. One night, Jake found something new. A hidden chamber sealed behind a heavy door. Inside was a device, massive and sleek like a sleeping beast. It pulsed faintly, alive but weak. Jake's heart raced. This wasn't just an engine or a weapon. It was something more, something the galaxy hadn't seen in centuries. He didn't know what it did, but he knew it was important. He worked harder, barely sleeping. He studied the device, piecing together its purpose. It wasn't just tech. It was a masterpiece built by a race long gone. The aliens who'd abandoned the ship hadn't understood it. They'd feared it, maybe. But Jake wasn't afraid. He was curious. One day the captain lost patience. "Enough, human," he growled over the comms. "We're leaving tomorrow. Get back or stay with your junk." Jake didn't answer. He was close to something big. The device hummed louder now, its lights brighter. He connected a final wire and the chamber shook. A voice, deep and mechanical, spoke in his headset. It wasn't human, but Jake understood. "System online," it said. "Core restored," Jake grinned. The ship wasn't dead. It was alive and it was listening. Outside, the crew prepared to leave. They didn't know what Jake had done. They didn't know the ship was waking, its system stirring after centuries of sleep. Jake didn't tell them. He wasn't ready. He needed time to understand, time to build. But time was running out. Far across the galaxy, a signal flickered, a warning sent by the ship's awakening. Something heard it. Something ancient, powerful, and hungry. It turned its gaze toward the wreck, toward Jake. He didn't know it yet, but he'd started something bigger than himself. The forgotten starship wasn't just a machine. It was a key to the galaxy's past and maybe its future. And Jake, the stubborn human mechanic, was the only one who could unlock it. The starship's bridge vibrated as the massive cannon unfolded from its hull. Jake stared at the view screen, his hand still on the button he'd pressed. The cannon glowed with the same blue light as the device in the hidden chamber, its energy humming through the ship. The mechanical voice spoke in his headset. Weapon system online. Target acquired. Outside, the enemy's boarding pods sped closer, their dark shapes like knives cutting through the void. Jake's heart pounded. He didn't know what the cannon could do, but it was his only chance. The enemy ship, black, jagged, and menacing, loomed in the distance, its weapons charging for another strike. The drift in his cruise ship was already pulling away, abandoning him. Jake didn't care. He was in too deep, and the starship felt like it was his now. It trusted him, and he trusted it. Fire, he said, his voice steady. The cannon erupted. A beam of blue energy shot from the starship, slicing through space. It hit the nearest boarding pod, turning it to dust in a silent explosion. The other pods scattered, but the beam swept across them, destroying two more. Jake's jaw dropped. The power was unreal, clean, precise, like nothing he'd ever seen. The enemy ship fired back, its red beam slamming into the starship's shields. The bridge shook, but the shields held, flickering but strong. The voice spoke again. Core at 65%. Weapon system unstable. Jake glanced at the console. Red warnings flashed across the screen, showing strain in the device's core. He'd pushed it too hard, too fast. The cannon was powerful, but the ship wasn't ready. He needed to stabilize it or the whole thing could blow. He ran to the hidden chamber, dodging sparks from damaged panels. The device glowed brighter than ever, its blue light almost blinding. Heat poured off it, and the air smelled of burning metal. Jake grabbed his tools, checking the cables he'd patched. One was fraying, sparking where it connected to the core. He wrapped it with tape, his hands moving fast. The voice warned, core overload critical. Divert power to stabilize. Jake hesitated. Diverting power would weaken the cannon and shields, leaving him vulnerable. But if the core blew, he'd lose everything. He made a choice, flipping a switch to reroute energy. The hum softened and the warning slowed. The cannon stopped firing and the shields dimmed. Jake held his breath, watching the view screen. The enemy ship hadn't moved. It was watching, waiting, back on the drift. The crew stared in shock. The starship's beam had lit up the void brighter than a star. Lila, the pilot, gripped her controls. That wasn't just a weapon, she said. That was impossible. The captain, his forearms tense, growled. The humans playing with fire. That ship's dangerous, but he didn't leave. The drift stayed, hovering at a safe distance, its scanners locked on the battle. The enemy ship spoke again, its cold voice cutting through Jake's comms. Surrender the vessel, human. You cannot control it. Jake clenched his fists. They knew his name, or at least his species. That meant they'd been watching, maybe longer than he realized. Not happening, he said, his voice low. He didn't know who they were, but he wasn't giving up the starship. It was his now, his puzzle to solve. He returned to the bridge, checking the console. The drones he'd launched earlier were gone, destroyed by the enemy's beam. But the starship had more tricks. The screen showed a new system. Mobility restored. Thrusters online. Jake's eyes widened. The ship could move. He slid into the pilot's chair, its alien design strange under his hands. He didn't know how to fly a starship, but he'd driven haulers and fixed engines. He could figure it out. He pushed the controls and the ship groaned, lurching forward. The view screen showed the wreck moving, slow but steady, its rusted hull cutting through space. Jake aimed it away from the enemy, buying time. The enemy ship followed, its weapons glowing again. Jake muttered to himself, "Come on, old girl. Give me something." The ship answered with a new alert. Secondary weapon system online. Deploy. Jake didn't hesitate. He hit the button and the hull rumbled. Panels opened, launching a swarm of glowing missiles. They spiraled toward the enemy ship, exploding in bursts of light. The enemy's shields flared, absorbing most of the hits, but one missile broke through, scarring its hull. Jake cheered. That's it. But the victory was short. The enemy fired back, its beams slamming into the starship's side. The shields flickered out and the bridge went dark for a moment. Jake stumbled, grabbing the console. The voice spoke, core at 70%. Hull breach detected, Jake cursed. The ship was tough, but it couldn't take much more. He needed the device's full power, but it was still locked, waiting for something he didn't have. He scanned the console, desperate for answers. A new message appeared, faint and garbled in a language he couldn't read. But one word stood out, translated by the ship. Key. Jake's mind raced. A key? Was it a code, a device, or something else? He remembered the chamber, the device's strange symbols. Maybe the answer was there. He ran back, his boots echoing in the shaking corridors. The enemy ship was closing in, its boarding pods trying again. Jake reached the chamber, the device now glowing so bright it hurt his eyes. He searched the console, finding a small slot he hadn't noticed before. It looked like it needed something physical, a key to unlock the final systems. The ship shook again, harder this time. The enemy was pounding it, and the hull wouldn't hold. Jake's comms buzzed with the enemy's voice. Last warning, human. Give us the weapon. Jake ignored them, his hands searching the chamber. He found a panel rusted shut. He pried it open with his wrench, revealing a small, glowing crystal inside. It pulsed like the device, warm to the touch. Was this the key? He grabbed it, running back to the bridge. The console's slot matched the crystal's shape. Jake slid it in and the ship roared to life. Lights flared and the voice spoke. Authorization accepted. Primary function unlocking. The view screen showed the cannon charging again, brighter than before. But the enemy ship was too close, its weapons aimed directly at the bridge. Jake braced himself. Fire, he whispered. The starship's bridge glowed with faint light, its dusty screens flickering to life. Jake stood at the controls, his hands steady despite the chaos outside. The enemy ship, black, jagged, and massive, loomed on the view screen, its weapons glowing red. It fired again and the abandoned starship shook, sparks flying from the walls. Jake gritted his teeth. He'd woken the ship, but it was still weak, its systems barely holding together. He had to act fast. The mechanical voice spoke in his headset. Core at 40%. Defense systems active. Weapons limited. Jake glanced at the console. The ship's turrets had fired back, surprising the enemy, but they weren't strong enough to win. The map on the screen showed green lines spreading, systems he'd repaired, but red warnings still flashed across the ship. It needed more power, more time. Jake had neither. His comms crackled with the captain's voice from the drift. Human, what's happening? That wreck's shooting. Are you insane? Jake ignored him, his fingers flying over the controls. He didn't know the ship's alien tech, but he knew machines. They had logic, patterns. He found a slider marked with a glowing symbol and pushed it up. The hum in the ship grew louder and the view screen showed the turrets charging again. Outside, the enemy ship swerved, dodging another weak blast from the starship. It was fast, too fast, and its hull shimmered like it was cloaking. Jake's stomach twisted. This wasn't a scavenger or pirate ship. It was something else, something that knew what this starship was. He tapped the console, pulling up more data. The screen showed the device in the hidden chamber, its energy climbing. Core at 45%, the voice said. Primary function locked, Jake cursed. The device was the key, he was sure of it, but it needed something he didn't have. Authorization? More power? He didn't know. But he wasn't giving up. The enemy ship fired again and the starship groaned, a panel exploding near Jake. He ducked, coughing in the smoke. Come on, he muttered to the ship. You're tougher than this. He ran back to the hidden chamber, his boots pounding the metal floor. The device glowed brighter now, its blue light pulsing like a star. Jake checked the cables he'd patched, tightening a loose one. The hum spiked and the voice spoke. Core at 50%. Warning, external threat detected. Jake smirked. Yeah, I know. He found another console, this one showing a new option. Divert power to shields? He didn't hesitate, slamming the button. The starship rumbled as energy surged to its hull. Outside, a faint shimmer appeared, a shield, weak but holding. The enemy's next shot hit it and the ship shook but didn't break. Jake pumped his fist. That's it. Keep fighting. He felt the ship respond, its systems humming louder like it trusted him. Back on the drift, the crew watched, stunned. The abandoned wreck, dead for centuries, was glowing, its shields flaring against the enemy's fire. Lila, the pilot, stared at the scanners. "The human's doing this," she whispered. The captain growled, his forearms tense. "He's going to get us all killed." But he didn't move the drift. Something about the Starship's fight kept them rooted. The enemy ship stopped firing. It hung in space, silent, like it was thinking. Jake watched it on the bridge's view screen, his heart pounding. Then a new signal hit his comms, not from the drift, but from the enemy. A voice, cold and sharp, spoke in broken English. "Surrender the vessel, or perish in flames." Jake froze. They knew he was here. They wanted the Starship and its device. He didn't answer. Instead, he scanned the console for options. The ship's weapons were still weak, but he found something new. Auxiliary systems online. He opened the menu and his eyes widened. The ship had more than turrets. Hidden compartments held drones, small and fast, built for combat. Jake grinned. "Let's see what you've got." He activated the drones and the view screen showed them launching. Dozens of tiny, glowing machines swarming toward the enemy ship. They moved like bees, darting and weaving. The enemy fired, but the drones were too quick, their lasers cutting into the black hull. Sparks flew and the enemy ship pulled back, its shimmer fading. Jake cheered, but it was short-lived. The console flashed red. Core overload risk. Divert power? Jake hesitated. The device was pushing too hard, drawing energy from the ship's systems. If he kept fighting, the core might burn out. But if he stopped, the enemy would board. He made a choice. "Keep power to weapons," he said, hoping the ship understood. The drones kept attacking, but the enemy ship adapted. It fired a wide beam, sweeping through the drones and destroying half of them. The Starship shook again, its shields flickering. Jake's comms buzzed with Lila's voice. "Human, we're leaving." "You're on your own!" Jake's jaw tightened. He wasn't surprised. The crew didn't care about him or the ship, but he wasn't giving up. He ran to the engine room, checking the core. It glowed too bright, heat radiating from its casing. Jake grabbed a wrench, tightening loose bolts to stabilize it. The voice spoke, "Core at 60%. Overload imminent." Jake ignored the warning, rerouting power manually. The ship groaned, but the shields held. He was buying time, but not much. On the view screen, the enemy ship changed tactics. It launched smaller craft, boarding pods heading straight for the Starship. Jake's heart sank. They weren't just after the ship. They wanted him too. He grabbed a metal pipe from the floor, ready to fight if they got inside. But deep down, he knew it wouldn't be enough. Then the console beeped. A new message appeared. Authorization protocol bypassed. Primary function unlocking. Jake stared. The device in the chamber was waking fully, its energy spiking. The ship rumbled and the view screen showed something new, a massive cannon unfolding from the Starship's hull. It glowed with the same blue light as the device. Jake's eyes widened. "What are you?" he whispered. The voice answered, "Weapon system online." Awaiting command. Outside, the boarding pods closed in. Jake's hand hovered over the controls. He didn't know what the cannon would do, but he was out of options. He pressed the button. The Starship roared as the crystal key slotted into the console. Blue light surged through the bridge and the view screen blazed with new data. Jake's hands gripped the controls, his heart racing. The mechanical voice spoke, clear and steady. Primary function unlocked. Core at 80%. Weapon system fully active. Outside, the massive cannon glowed brighter, its energy pulsing like a living thing. The enemy ship, black and jagged, hovered too close, its weapons aimed at the Starship's heart. Jake didn't hesitate. "Fire!" he shouted. The cannon unleashed a beam of pure energy, brighter than a star. It tore through space, slamming into the enemy ship's shields. The black hull sparked and shuddered, cracks forming where the beam hit. The boarding pods, moments from reaching the Starship, vaporized in the blast's wake. Jake's eyes widened. This was no ordinary weapon. It was power on a scale he couldn't comprehend, something that could reshape the galaxy. But the enemy wasn't done. Its shields flickered but held, and it fired back, red beams pounding the Starship's hull. The shields Jake had activated were failing, and the bridge shook, throwing him to the floor. Sparks rained from the ceiling, and the voice warned, "Hull integrity at 30%. Core strain detected." Jake scrambled to his feet, checking the console. The crystal key had unlocked the weapon, but the ship was still too damaged to sustain it. He needed more time. Time to fix the hull. Time to stabilize the core. But the enemy wasn't giving him any. The view screen showed their ship charging another shot, its weapons glowing hotter. Jake's mind raced. He couldn't outfight them, not yet. But he could outsmart them. He'd been fixing broken machines his whole life, finding ways to make them work when others gave up. This starship was no different. He scanned the console, searching for options. The screen showed new systems coming online. Navigation array active. Stealth mode available. Jake's lips curled into a grin. Stealth, that was his way out. He slammed the controls, diverting power to the navigation system. The starship groaned, its thrusters flaring as it twisted through space. A faint shimmer spread across its hull, cloaking it from view. The enemy's beams missed, cutting through empty space. Jake held his breath, watching the view screen. The enemy ship paused, its scanners sweeping the void. They couldn't see him, not yet. But the stealth mode drained power fast, and the core's warnings grew louder. Core at 85%. Overload risk critical, the voice said. Jake cursed. He needed to move, hide, and fix the ship before it tore itself apart. He steered the starship toward a nearby asteroid field, its rocks floating like silent giants. The enemy ship followed slower now, its scanners probing. Jake weaved through the asteroids, the starship's thrusters responding to his touch. It was clumsy, like driving a broken hauler, but he made it work. He always did. Back on the drift, the crew watched in silence. The starship had vanished, its signal gone from their scanners. Lila, the pilot, shook her head. "The human's insane," she said. "He's fighting a warship with junk." The captain, his forearms crossed, stared at the asteroid field. "He's not just fighting," he muttered. "He's winning." The crew exchanged glances. They'd abandoned Jake, but now they weren't so sure. The starship wasn't junk. It was something else, something dangerous. Inside the starship, Jake parked it behind a massive asteroid, cutting the thrusters. The stealth mode held, but the core's hum was unsteady, like a heart skipping beats. He ran to the hidden chamber where the device glowed too bright, its heat scorching the air. The crystal key pulsed in the console, its energy linked to the core. Jake checked the cables, tightening loose connections. The voice spoke. "Core stabilized. Repairs needed for full operation." Jake nodded, wiping sweat from his face. He could fix it, he always could, but he needed parts, tools, and time. The asteroid field wouldn't hide him forever. He returned to the bridge, checking the view screen. The enemy ship was closer, its scanners lighting up the asteroids. They knew he was here and they weren't leaving. Then the console beeped. A new signal appeared, not from the enemy, but from somewhere else. It was faint, coming from deep in the galaxy. The screen translated it. "Allied distress call." "Respond?" Jake frowned. "Allies?" The starship was ancient, its makers long gone. Who could be calling it now? He hesitated, then opened the signal. A voice, weak but human, crackled through. "This is colony ship. Under attack. Need help. Coordinates attached." Jake's chest tightened. Humans. A colony ship out there fighting for survival. He looked at the view screen where the enemy ship prowled. If he answered the call, he'd give away his position. The starship wasn't ready and the core could fail, but he couldn't ignore it. Humans were in trouble and Jake wasn't the kind to walk away. He activated the comms, sending a short reply. "Hold on. I'm coming." The starship systems hummed as if agreeing. Jake steered out of the asteroid field, dropping the stealth mode. The enemy ship spotted him instantly, its weapons charging. Jake pushed the thrusters to full power, the starship shaking as it sped toward the distress call's coordinates. The console flashed new data. Weapon system upgraded. Core at 90%. The crystal key had unlocked more than the cannon. It was waking the ship's true potential. Jake saw a new option. Energy pulse ready. He didn't know what it meant, but it sounded big. He targeted the enemy ship now chasing him and activated it. A wave of blue energy erupted from the starship, rippling through space. It hit the enemy, shutting down their shields and lights. Their ship drifted powerless for a moment. Jake didn't wait to see if they recovered. He pushed the starship forward toward the colony ship's signal, but as he flew, the console beeped again. The distress call changed, its tone shifting. The human voice was gone, replaced by something cold, mechanical. "Vessel acquired. Prepare for assimilation." Jake's blood ran cold. It wasn't a colony ship. It was a trap. Jake knelt in the starship's hidden chamber, his flashlight flickering as the strange device hummed louder. Its sleek black surface pulsed with faint blue light like a heartbeat. The air felt heavy, charged with energy. The mechanical voice from the ship's system echoed in his headset again. Core at 10%. Awaiting commands. Jake's hands shook, not from fear but excitement. He didn't know what the device was, but it was no ordinary machine. It felt alive, waiting for him to unlock its secrets. He'd been sneaking to the wreck for days, ignoring the salvage crew's complaints. The Drift, their clunky ship, was still parked nearby, but the captain was done waiting. Last chance, human. His voice crackled over the comms. We leave in 6 hours. Be on board or stay with your trash. Jake barely heard him. His focus was on the device, its wires now neatly patched, its panels glowing brighter. He'd fixed enough to know this wasn't just a power core. It was something bigger, something the galaxy had forgotten. Jake traced a cable to a new console, its screen flashing alien symbols. He couldn't read them, but he understood patterns. Machines spoke in logic, and Jake was fluent. He tapped the screen and it responded, showing a map of the ship. Red lines marked broken systems. Green ones showed what he'd repaired. The ship was coming alive piece by piece, but the device in the chamber was the key. If he could fully activate it, he'd know what this starship was meant to do. Outside, the crew grumbled. Crazy human, muttered Lila, the pilot, a short alien with sharp claws. He's obsessed with that junk. The others nodded, checking their scanners for better wrecks. But something new appeared on their screens, a faint signal pulsing from the starship. Lila frowned. That's not right. It was dead yesterday. The captain, his forearms crossed, stared at the wreck through the viewport. Probably the human messing with wires. Ignore it, but Jake wasn't just messing around. Back in the chamber, he found a manual override, a lever hidden under a panel. He pulled it and the room shook. Lights flared, bright and blinding. The device's hum grew into a roar and the voice spoke again. Core at 20%. Structural integrity critical. Repairs required. Jake grinned. The ship was talking to him, guiding him. He grabbed his tools and got to work, patching circuits and sealing cracks in the chamber's walls. Hours passed. Sweat dripped down his face, but he didn't stop. The ship's systems were waking faster now. Lights blinked in corridors, air vents hissed, and the floor vibrated softly. Jake felt it. The ship wanted to live. He moved to the engine room, rerouting power to stabilize the core. The map on the console showed more green lines. He was close. But then a new alert flashed on the screen. It wasn't in English, but the red warning was clear. Danger. Jake's comms buzzed. It was Lila, her voice sharp. Human, what are you doing? The wreck's sending signals. It's lighting up our scanners. Jake froze. He hadn't told the crew about the device. Just fixing things, he said, keeping his voice calm. It's fine. But Lila wasn't convinced. It's not fine. Something's out there. Our long-range scanners caught a ship, big, fast, and coming this way. Jake's stomach tightened. The galaxy was full of scavengers, pirates, and worse. If they'd picked up the starship signal, he was in trouble. He ran back to the chamber, checking the device. Its lights pulsed faster, like it knew something was coming. Come on, Jake muttered. Tell me what you are. The console flickered, showing a schematic, a blueprint of the device. It wasn't just a power core. It was a weapon, or maybe more. The symbols hinted at energy outputs beyond anything Jake had seen. A superweapon, a shield. He needed more time. The Drift's alarms blared. Unknown vessel approaching. The captain shouted over the comms. Human, get back now. Jake ignored him. He couldn't leave, not yet. He patched another circuit and the device's voice spoke again. Core at 30%. Primary function locked. Authorization required, Jake cursed. Authorization? He was just a mechanic, not some alien commander. But he wasn't giving up. Outside, the crew scrambled. The approaching ship was massive, its hull black and jagged like a predator's claw. It wasn't human or any species they knew. Lila's claws tapped nervously on her controls. It's not responding to hails, she said. The captain growled. Ready the guns. And get that human back. But Jake wasn't listening. He was deep in the starship, his hands moving fast, connecting wires and flipping switches. Then the wreck shook. Not from Jake's work, but from outside. A low boom echoed through the hull. The comms crackled with panic. They're firing! Lila yelled. Small blast scanning us. Jake's heart raced. Whoever was out there, they wanted the Starship. Or maybe they wanted what Jake had found. He looked at the device, its lights now steady. Come on, he whispered. Help me out here. The console flashed again, showing a new command. Initiate defense protocol? Jake didn't know what it meant, but he wasn't about to let pirates, or whatever they were, take this ship. He pressed the button. The chamber roared to life. Panels slid open, revealing hidden turrets in the ship's hull. A faint glow spread through the corridors, and the voice spoke. Defense systems active. Core at 40%. Outside, the enemy ship fired again, but the Starship responded. Beams of light shot from its turrets, grazing the attacker. The crew on the drift gasped. The wreck's alive! Lila shouted. The captain stared, his forearms frozen. The human. He did this? Jake didn't hear their shock. He was already moving, running to the bridge. The ship's systems were waking, but it wasn't enough. The enemy was closing in, and the Starship was still weak. Jake reached the bridge, a dusty room with a massive view screen. It flickered on, showing the black ship outside, huge, menacing, and now angry. Its weapons glowed, ready to fire again. Jake's hands flew over the controls. He didn't know the ship, but he knew machines. He could feel its pulse, its will to fight. Hold on, he muttered. We're not done yet. The Starship hummed as if answering him. Somewhere deep in the galaxy, the signal kept pulsing, calling to others. Jake had started something, and there was no going back. The Starship sped through the void, its thrusters roaring as Jake pushed it toward the distress call's coordinates. The console's cold mechanical voice echoed in his headset. Vessel acquired. Prepare for assimilation. Jake's stomach churned. The human voice he'd heard was gone, replaced by something alien and menacing. It wasn't a colony ship in trouble, it was a trap. He'd flown straight into it, and the black, jagged enemy ship was still behind him, its systems recovering from the energy pulse he'd unleashed. Jake gripped the controls, his mind racing. The Starship's cannon glowed, ready to fire again, but the core's warnings flashed red on the screen. Core at 90%. Overload imminent. He couldn't keep pushing it, not without risking everything. The crystal key in the console pulsed, its blue light steady but hot. Jake knew it was the heart of the ship's power, but he didn't fully understand it. Not yet. The view screen showed a new signal ahead. A massive structure floating in space, half hidden in a nebula's glow. It wasn't a ship. It was a station, its surface covered in sharp spines like a predator's teeth. Lights flickered across it, and smaller craft swarmed like insects. Jake's comms crackled again with the same mechanical voice. Surrender the vessel, human. Resistance is futile. He clenched his jaw. Whoever they were, they wanted the Starship, and they weren't asking nicely. He checked the console. The energy pulse had bought him time, but the enemy ship was closing in again, its weapons glowing. The station ahead was the trap's heart, and Jake was flying right toward it. He needed a plan. He wasn't a soldier or a pilot, just a mechanic who fixed broken things. But broken things were his specialty, and this Starship was his now. He scanned the console for options. The screen showed the ship's systems. Shields weak, cannon ready, thrusters strained. Then he saw something new. Core sync complete. Transformation protocol available. Jake frowned. Transformation? The ship was already powerful, but this sounded different. He hesitated, then pressed the button. The Starship shook and the voice spoke. Initiating transformation. Core at 95%. Panels on the hull slid open, and the view screen showed the ship changing. Its rusted frame shifted, folding and expanding. Wings extended, glowing with blue energy. The cannon retracted, replaced by a larger, sleeker weapon. Jake's eyes widened. The Starship wasn't just a wreck, it was built to adapt, to become something more. The voice confirmed. Transformation complete. Combat mode active. Jake didn't have time to marvel. The station's smaller craft, drones fast and sharp, swarmed toward him. Their lasers grazed the Starship's shields, sparking across the hull. Jake steered hard, dodging through the nebula's clouds. The transformed ship was faster, more agile, like it was alive. He fired the new cannon, and a focused beam cut through the drones, destroying a dozen in one shot. The station responded, its spines glowing as it launched more. Back on the drift, far behind, the crew watched their scanners in disbelief. The Starship wasn't just fighting, it was dominating. Lila, the pilot, stared at the data. The humans controlling that thing, she said. The captain, his forearms tense, shook his head. No one controls a ship like that. It's ancient. Dangerous, but he didn't look away. Jake was doing the impossible and they couldn't stop watching. The enemy ship caught up, its black hull looming on the view screen. It fired a massive beam and the starship's shields buckled. Jake braced himself as the bridge shook, console sparking. Shields at 10%, the voice warned. He needed to end this fast. He targeted the station, aiming the cannon at its core. If he could hit it, maybe the drones would stop. But the enemy ship blocked his path, its weapons locking on. Jake's mind flashed to the device in the hidden chamber. The crystal key had unlocked its power, but there was more to it. He remembered the schematics, hints of a weapon beyond the cannon. He opened the console's menu, finding a final option. Ultimate Protocol. Warning, core overload guaranteed. Jake's heart sank. Overload meant destruction, but if he didn't act, the station and its drones would tear him apart. He made a choice. He diverted all power to the cannon, ignoring the warnings. The ship hummed, its frame shaking as energy surged. The voice spoke. Ultimate Protocol charging. Target required. Jake aimed at the station, its spines now firing beams that rocked the ship. He whispered to the starship, "You're more than junk." "Let's show them," he fired. The beam was blinding, a wave of blue fire that lit up the nebula. It struck the station and for a moment everything was still. Then the station exploded, its spines shattering, drones falling silent. The enemy ship veered away, damaged but alive. Jake slumped in the chair, exhausted. The console flashed, core critical. Shutdown imminent. The starship's lights dimmed, its hum fading. Jake thought he'd won, but the comms crackled again. The enemy ship's voice returned, colder than before. "You cannot stop us, human. The weapon is ours." The view screen showed the black ship retreating, but not alone. A new signal appeared, massive and distant, growing closer. It wasn't one ship. It was a fleet. Jake's hands tightened on the controls. The starship was dying, its core burned out from the blast. He had no shields, no weapons, and no way out. But he wasn't done. He ran to the hidden chamber, where the device flickered weakly. The crystal key still glowed, faint but alive. Jake touched it, feeling its warmth. "You've got one more fight in you," he said. The console beeped, showing a final message. "Emergency protocol available. Activate." Jake didn't know what it meant, but he was out of options. He pressed the button and the ship shook violently. The voice spoke one last time. "Beacon activated." "Calling all allies." Jake froze. "Allies?" The signal pulsed, reaching across the galaxy. The fleet was closing in, and the starship was defenseless. But somewhere, something heard the call, and it was coming. The starship hung silent in the nebula's glow, its core flickering like a dying ember. Jake stood on the bridge, his hands trembling on the controls. The console's warning flashed red. Core critical. Shutdown complete. The ship's weapons were offline, its shields gone, and its thrusters dead. The crystal key in the console pulsed weakly, its blue light fading. Jake had activated the emergency beacon, a desperate call for allies, but he didn't know who or what would answer. The view screen showed the enemy fleet approaching. A dozen black, jagged ships, their weapons glowing red. The first enemy ship, damaged but alive, led them. Its cold voice crackled through the comms. "Human, you have lost. Surrender the weapon or perish." Jake's jaw tightened. He'd fought too hard to give up now. This starship wasn't junk. It was his, and he'd make it fight one last time. He ran to the hidden chamber where the device sat, its glow faint but steady. The crystal key was still warm, linked to the core. Jake checked the cables, his hands moving fast despite the exhaustion. The ship was broken, but he'd fixed broken things before. He always found a way. The voice spoke, weak but clear. "Emergency protocol active. Beacon signal sent." Core at 5%, Jake's heart sank. 5% wasn't enough to fight a fleet. He needed a miracle. He tightened a loose wire, hoping for a spark of power. The device hummed and the console flickered with a new message. Manual override possible. Risk, total core failure. Jake hesitated. Override meant pushing the core past its limit. It could destroy the ship and him, but the fleet was closing in, and he had no other choice. He returned to the bridge, the view screen showing the enemy ships spreading out, ready to fire. Jake took a deep breath, his hand hovering over the override button. "You're more than a machine," he whispered to the starship. "Let's finish this." He pressed the button and the ship roared to life. Lights flared and the core's hum grew into a scream. The voice warned, "Core overload initiated." 10 seconds to critical. Jake didn't wait. He targeted the lead enemy ship and fired the cannon. A massive blue beam erupted, brighter than ever, tearing through the void. It struck the enemy ship, shattering its hull in a silent explosion. The other ships fired back, their red beams slamming into the Starship. The bridge shook, panels exploding, but Jake held the controls, firing again. Another enemy ship burst into flames. The console screamed, "Core at critical." Ejection advised. Jake ignored it. He wasn't leaving. The Starship was his and he'd see this through. He fired the cannon again, taking out 2 more ships. The fleet scattered, their formation breaking. Jake grinned, sweat dripping down his face. That's right, run. But the core was failing. The ship's lights flickered and the hum faltered. The view screen showed the remaining enemy ships regrouping, their weapons charging for a final strike. Jake's heart pounded. He'd taken out half the fleet, but it wasn't enough. The beacon signal was still pulsing, but no allies had come. He was alone. Then the console beeped. A new signal appeared, fast and strong, from the edge of the nebula. The view screen flickered, showing a fleet of ships, not black and jagged, but sleek and silver, their hulls marked with human symbols. Jake's eyes widened. Humans, a colony fleet armed and ready. Their comms crackled with a warm voice. "This is Captain Ellis, human colony fleet. We got your signal. Hold tight." Jake laughed, relief washing over him. The Starship had called and humans had answered. The colony ships opened fire, their lasers cutting through the enemy fleet. The black ships fought back, but they were outmatched. Jake watched, his hand still on the controls, as the human fleet pushed the enemy back. The Starship's core flickered, but it held, just barely. He steered the ship forward, joining the fight. The cannon had 1 shot left, and Jake aimed it at the largest enemy ship. "This is for you," he said to the Starship, and fired. The beam sliced through the enemy's core, and it exploded in a burst of light. The remaining black ships turned and fled, disappearing into the nebula. The Starship went quiet, its core finally dead. Jake slumped in the chair, exhausted but alive. The human fleet's voice came through again. "Unknown vessel, identify yourself." Jake smiled, his voice hoarse. "This is Jake, human engineer. Thanks for the backup." The colony fleet escorted the Starship to a nearby human outpost. Engineers swarmed it, amazed at its ancient design. They called it a relic, a legend from a forgotten war. Jake didn't care about the history. He'd fixed it, fought with it, and won. The crystal key, now dark, sat in his pocket. He didn't know if the ship would fly again, but he'd made it the galaxy's mightiest weapon, just for a moment. Back on the drift, the crew was silent. They'd watched the battle from a distance, too stunned to speak. Lila, the pilot, shook her head. "He did it. The human actually did it." The captain, his forearms relaxed for the first time, nodded. "Never underestimate a human." Jake stood on the outpost, looking at the Starship's scarred hull. It was broken again, but it wasn't junk. It had saved him, and he'd saved it. The human commander approached, offering him a place in the fleet. Jake shook his head. "I'm just a mechanic," he said. "But if you need something fixed, call me." As he walked away, the galaxy felt different. The Starship's beacon had reached more than the human fleet. Across the stars, others had heard it, friends and enemies alike. Jake didn't know what was coming, but he knew one thing. Humans didn't give up. And neither would he.